Good evening, students. I wanted to talk about the Monroe Motivated Sequence Organizational Pattern. You're simply going to click here to access all the resources for the policy speech assignment. This is where everything is, the one-stop shop. Click on Resources for Policy Speeches. If you scroll down at the bottom, you're going to see the Monroe Motivated Sequence Organizational Pattern. If you want, I've got a Google Doc here with the same information that you'll be able to download and literally fill in the blanks. And I don't want to click on that right now, but you can do that. That's why I have the doc open so that you can use that as a template to do your speech. Now, when I was a student, I struggled with this organizational pattern. I didn't get good with it until I was an instructor. If your brain is very organized, linear, you may not like it. But I have found in the past, when I used to teach this as only a organizational pattern for advanced public speaking students when I taught at University of North Carolina at Charlotte and Texas Lutheran University. When I started teaching at community college, I noticed that students really liked it. So I started to integrate it as an organizational pattern for my students at ACC. And a lot of them, quite frankly, most of them use this in the persuasive assignment. This speech is basically, you put the square peg in the square hole and you put the circle in the circle hole. It's very much a formula type of speech. Now, I make it very clear if you have to do all of the items or if you have to do one item. It's very clear. Here is your attention step. This is your introduction. What is missing from the introduction? The introduction to an informative speech or a persuasive speech with other organizational patterns. Because think of the Monroe as the I before E except after C, has an attention getter, a statement of credibility, a pointer, and a preview, or motivate audience to listen, or pointing, or preview. Notice, this only has the attention getter. My feeling is that it should have an attention getter and a statement of credibility, but in its purest form, it only has an attention getter. And these are some options for your attention getter. You can use some data or maybe some sort of story, some sort of quotation. Like I told you, what I'll usually do is go online and research like a corruption quote or whatever the general topic is, I'll find some sort of quote from a famous person. And if you do this, make sure you know who the famous person is. You don't want to quote someone that you have an objection with your ideological bent. So literally, it's just an attention getter. So if you scroll down here, she starts off with a rhetorical question and throws in some data, okay? This student down here throws in another piece of data. Actually, this is one of the best speeches I ever graded, and it's literally one page. Some of these speeches are 5 pages or more. The second thing you're going to do is talk about the problem. This is a problem-solution organizational pattern. The next lecture will be on problem solution. So you're going to do all of these. Now notice, in here there is no preview. There is no thesis statement. This is basically what they use for commercials is this speech. Okay, so if you ever seen like a pharmaceutical ad, this is what they do. Here you're going to indicate what the problem is. So the problem in today's society is not that students don't wear school uniforms, because them not wearing student uniforms or banning school uniforms or making people use student uniforms is your solution. So don't turn your problem into we're not doing my solution. The reason why we need school uniforms is because students are bullied, or that students are targeted, or that maybe kids who can't afford fancy clothes get made fun of, that kind of thing. So the problem in today's American school system is that children are bullied because of their economic situation. They can't afford expensive clothes. Or the problem in today's society is that we have gang behavior, use of colors, and so, and you kind of talk about that. You're going to create some sort of problem statement. The problem in today's society is that Americans are stressed out. The solution may be meditation, all right? You're not going to say the problem is today Americans don't meditate. If you do not follow these instructions, I will send your outline back and have you reconstruct it. So make sure that your problem is not that you're doing the solution. Then you're going to insert some sort of story about a kid who got bullied either because he or she didn't have expensive clothes, or there was some sort of violent episode because people were wearing colors at school. Ramification is data. Okay, now if you want to put ramification as B and illustration as C, that's totally cool with me. What does this look like to you right here? Where do you usually find that in other speeches? That's right, in the introduction. Attention getter, credibility statement, pointing, and preview. So here is where you relate the problem to your audience. So you may say, all of us in Austin, Texas should be concerned about kids getting bullied. Or all of us as students in the pandemic are stressed out. It's a speaker-audience connection technique, and it also allows you, well, that's basically what it is, okay? So this is your backstory, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I may talk about this in another video. So your satisfaction step is, once again, all of these are required, and you're going to walk your audience through the solution. First, you're going to say, hey, the solution to kids getting bullied at school is to implement school uniforms, or the solution to being stressed out under a pandemic as an Austin Community College student is to engage in contemplative prayer, or to spend more time in physical fitness activity, or to meditate, or whatever it is. So hold on for just 1 second. I may have left a window open, and I'm wondering if the mosquitoes are getting in. Hold on. Nope, I didn't do it. For some reason, I did earlier and they may have gotten in. Okay, I must be sweet to the skeeters. Now what you're going to do in the explanation step is you're going to explain to your audience what the solution is. So here is where you would talk about how you would get more active, or what the diet is that you want to implement, or how the school uniform situation. You would explain how that would work. The school board would pass a policy, and then they would mandate and enforce students wearing school uniforms. This is one of my favorite parts, and it's sometimes kind of complicated. You may want to print this handout out and draw a line from here, this whole section here, okay, all of this here to here. Here's how you explain how your solution and what you just explained solves the problem. So now you're going to explain how everybody looking the same keeps kids from getting bullied because they can't afford expensive clothes, or how school uniforms will decrease gang violence because kids aren't wearing colors, or how contemplative prayer, meditation, or physical fitness will decrease stress. Here's where another thing that I really like to use when I do public policy stuff at the municipal level is I will always prove to them that I am not a hack. So smart meters is something a lot of people don't know about, and those are things they put on your house, and they can monitor your electronic usage from afar. Some people have privacy issues because they can tell, hey, so-and-so is in his kitchen at so-and-so time at night, or they're watching a lot of TV in their living room. They can do a lot of quote-unquote spying on you. My issue was that I could feel the dirty electricity, and it was making me have pains in my arms. And so I wanted smart meters banned, and I hounded the city council for years. In order to prove my point, I found actual examples from the city of Austin, which is 30 miles away from San Marcos, Texas, and in California. And I demonstrated that it was feasible economically speaking. It was feasible to accomplish in terms of just taking it off, taking the smart meter off. It was called a smart meter opt-out program, so that's what I went for. And versus like buying a smart meter and sticking it on my house and going to jail for manipulating a governmental piece of equipment, which is quite frankly what my ex-husband wanted to do, and I said, that's stupid. I went for the policy option. So what they ended up doing was they ended up passing it, and I demonstrated that in the city of Austin, it was $50 to go ahead and have them retool, to take off, and it literally took them 20 seconds. The city worker showed up at my house. It took him 20 seconds to take the smart meter off and put the analog meter back on, which is what your parents probably had. That's why we had the meter reader, and they eliminated that. To me, eliminated jobs, but whatever. And then I think I pay $50 a month. And the tag I would use is, I'm tired of being fried like a chicken pot pie in my own home. So I demonstrated actual examples of how it worked. Here is where you mentally debate your audience. So you may say, some of you may think that school uniforms are more expensive for homes that are struggling to pay their bills. I am here to tell you that the average cost of buying school clothes goes down by 80% when districts engage in a school uniform program. Some of you may think that you don't have time to go jogging or swimming to decrease stress. I am here to tell you that you will actually find yourself more productive through the day if you engage in physical fitness activity, that kind of thing. You can have several arguments or just one. If you have several arguments, go 1, 2, 3, 4, so you can do that. Pick one here. You have 3 different methods. You can either say, imagine, if you will, a world in which kids are not bullied. And you're going to tell a story maybe about a kid who became valedictorian as a result of school bullying ceasing upon the implementation of a school uniform program. The negative one, so this is like the puppies and rainbows, it's all peachy keen vision of reality. And it should be a story, and it should be at least 30 seconds. So tell a story. The next thing you're going to want to do is give us the negative, or you can do the negative method and say, hey, there's a tragic story about student X who, did engage in this very destructive behavior because they were continually bullied because their folks just simply didn't have the money to buy them. When I was in school, it was Jordache. That was like the big, or what was the other one? There was some lady. It'll come to me in a minute. She was like a fake, was it Jordache? I remember it was like these jeans that were super expensive, okay? So you could talk about that, how the kid was bullied and lost all of his friends and dropped out of school and turned to drugs and whatever, okay? And it should be like a very vivid example. It could be one you make up, or it could be one that you read from some evidentiary support that you have found. Or you can contrast the two, and you can go, here's what happened to student X, and tell that story, but upon implementation of school uniforms, this awesome thing happens. So you have a pick one. And then finally, you're going to, don't blow this off. Tell them specifically what you want to do. So if you want people to stop buying makeup that has animal testing, and every time I hear those animal testing speeches, I'm like, is the makeup I buy like animal testing? And so I'm like, can you write down what I can buy that's not animal testing? So say, hey, quit by doing this, or start doing this. If you say go vote or go sign this petition against the orca whale situation at SeaWorld, tell me which petition you want me to sign. Now, if you like to tell stories, you've got a lot of different options. You can tell me a story here in your attention getter in the illustration. You can tell me a story, or you're going to tell me a story here in the illustration section. You might want to tell me a story here, but it should be grounded in practical experience, and obviously the story time is here. So there's a lot of opportunities to do that. This is a wonderful backstory for you to have in your mind, and this is kind of like punching the buttons of your audience. Okay, so do you want them to be worried about hey, where they live, like basic, or even like food, water, shelter kind of thing? Are you going to scare them like, oh, you're going to be unsafe if you don't do this situation? Is it more like, hey, you want people to be feel belonged in the group? Is this more of an issue in your speech that you want people to feel good about themselves? Or is this more of a transpersonal self-concept situation, self-actualization? Now, my argument, this is my personal opinion, is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs can often be flawed. Because his argument, my understanding, is that you have to have this in order to get to here, in order to get to here, in order to get to here and here. And my argument is, well, how do you explain religious people who take vows of poverty that maybe don't have a lot of money, but they have very high levels of self-actualization? They're very satisfied mentally and spiritually, quite frankly, because they don't engage in the belongingness needs of expensive clothes and so forth. That's my cat, one of my calico girls scratching the door. She wants in. These are some examples, and so there's, I think, another one I've got uploaded of what yours should look like. And look at the chunky group of works cited that this person provided, okay? The other thing, this one was kind of short as far as the way the page length was. And that's why people go, well, how long should the speech be in page numbers, Professor? And I'm like, it really changes based upon the speaker's style. This speech was literally, I think, 5 to 7 minutes. It was probably 7 minutes on the dot. And this gentleman had his research links, and then he had his works cited list. And here's another one. Okay, so these are examples of templates that you can utilize to help yourself. Here's a couple more. There was one, I may upload some more, these may be enough, but this one's kind of cool as well. I'd never heard of this type of giraffe, and this person was very passionate about these giraffes. Now, I like this one because there's data in here, but also the story. He or she could have told a story about the giraffe, and then of course there's a little bit of data in here. This is more data about the giraffe, but they could have talked about the endangered species of the giraffe. So kind of just flip through the examples and always have 2 tabs open, the example and then yours, and then here's another GMO speech. Well, I guess this is the one that I have in the example. So that's my lecture about the Monroe. There's also a podcast that you can listen to where I probably give some more examples, probably about the sidewalk. I told the city it's never going away, and it isn't. And so you can listen to my podcast if you're doing your chores, or if you're visual and you want to follow me looking at this document, you're more than welcome to do that. All right, thank you so much for listening to my speech.